7. The nourishment and rotation of the earth. 11th January 1847. Since the earth is, in a way, a great organic animal body, it must take food to continue to exist. But in order to take food, as with every animal, or even as with every plant, either a mouth or also several feeding or sucking trunks are necessary. Certain animals, such as polyps and others of the same kind, have a number of such sucking and eating proboscises. A sucking proboscis differs from a so-called eating proboscis in that the sucking proboscis only takes in purely liquid substances and directs them to the appropriate digestive organs for further nourishment of the animal body. But a proboscis also takes bodies, like all kinds of insects, also certain small root plants, into itself, crushes these by its solid muscles rubbing against each other, and only then leads them thus crushed into the further digestive organs. The same is more or less the case with all plants, trees and shrubs, since especially their roots are nothing but polyp-like proboscises. Their flowers, and especially the stamens in them, are mostly to be regarded as feeding proboscises, which, even if for a short time, take up the fertilized flower dust eggs, pollen, translator. At the same time, however, every animal body, as well as every planetary body, has a number of small suction tips on it, which by their nature are most suitable for sucking in the electrical and ethereal life substance from the free air. Since all these things, as animals and plants, are small and similarly typical productions of the earth body, it is self-evident that with the earth body, all this must be found in the greatest abundance. The earth has, therefore, like every animal, a main mouth, completely appropriate to its nature, through which it also receives the main food in itself. Besides this main mouth, however, it has also everywhere an innumerable quantity of bigger and smaller suction and feeding trunks, where in the counterpart it has then evenly again a corresponding main emptying canal, and besides this, also an innumerable quantity of smaller emptying canals. In order not to go too far in this matter, we will first examine the main mouth and the corresponding main drainage channel, because this exerts the main influence on the rotational movement of the earth. But as for the innumerable small feeding and discharging mouths or channels, we will only give them a brief general consideration, and then we will proceed to the main mouth. The North Pole is the Earth's main nutrient mouth. Like the South Pole, its corresponding main drainage channel. What does this mouth look like? It is rather large, its diameter at the outermost edge, where the mouth begins funnel-shaped, has a measure in the average between 20 and 30 miles, but narrows at the end up to 1/8 of a mile, in which width this mouth then continues to the stomach of the earth body, and that in a rather straight direction. However, the walls of this maw are very uneven and look very rippled, and sometimes long stretches thus pointed, or rather studded with peaks, as if they were covered with the skin of a giant urchin. The stomach of the earth is just below the heart, in the middle of the earth's body. This is a hollow space of about 10 square miles, which, however, all kinds of smaller and larger transverse bars, some in the diameter of 200 kilometers, extend in a kind of columnar way in all directions, partly expanding and partly supporting it. This stomach and these cross supports in it, which have the appearance of oval ribbons, also oval columns in the above-mentioned diameter, are not of a solid mass, but they are approximately of the same nature as a large rubber elastic bag, the inner walls of which would be mutually padded with the same material in a certain way, so that they may not be pressed upon each other by a gravity acting on them from outside. From this stomach, now described, a helically wound main channel then passes through the entire earth body and then opens out in the South Pole and is of the same matter as the stomach, only it becomes relatively firmer and more solid towards the opening. That from this main stomach of the earth, and from its main emptying canal, countless nutrient canals and vessels run out, hardly needs to be mentioned, since this goes without saying. And so we have now looked at the mouth, the stomach, and the discharge canal of the earth. And that as good as it is always possible with this large object in the shortest possible time. But now that we know this, namely the mouth, the stomach, and the discharge canal, the question now is about the food with which the earth is fed through this mouth. And because this is the main mouth, it is here about the main food. What does it consist of, and where does it come from? Whoever had the opportunity to go very far north on the surface of the earth, and also has knowledge in the realm of nature, will discover many phenomena in this highest polar region, which he would probably not find anywhere else on the surface of the earth. Firstly, a very cold air region, which reaches especially in winter-time a high degree hardly measurable for your instruments. This heavy and cold air will be joined by an even denser hazy mass, which, towards the North Pole, especially in winter, will be interspersed with countless shooting star-like balls of light. At the same time, however, he will also encounter, around the far edge of the pole, an enormous dam-like accumulation of snow crystals, and sometimes even ice peaks several fathoms high. See, there we have the food already. This magnetic earth mouth draws all this into itself with great force and directs it into the large stomach, on whose walls and crossbeams or supports this food then crystallizes. And when the stomach is filled in a way, the heat of the earth's heart then enters, sets these large stomach walls into a vibrating movement, and the inner crossbeams of the stomach then also quickly contract tightly and expand again widely. This food is now grated and crushed, and through this action, a new electrical substance is obtained, which decomposes the nutritious water parts in the stomach and discharges them into the countless nutrient channels, while then a negative electrical current seizes the indigestible remains in the stomach and drives them away with great force through the helically wound discharge channel, by which way these digested nutrient parts, due to continuous powerful friction, still have to give up the last remains of their nutritive substance. For which reason, then also, the northern part of the earth is much more compact than the southern, because on the latter, mostly the last and worst food parts come. By the finite expulsion of the last excrements of the earth, also the rotation of the earth's body is accomplished. Namely, by the fact that these excrements, which admittedly look very airy, push out in a winding fashion into the free ether, and give the earth a rolling momentum like that of a rocket wound around a wheel, which sets the wheel in motion when it is ignited, and that for the reason that the air escaping from the rocket is so violent that the outer air cannot escape or give way to it to the same degree of violence, whereby a continuous pressure column is formed between the outflowing air from the rocket and the outer air, which brings the wheel on which the rocket is mounted into the necessary rotation. Just as a so-called ascending rocket carries a similar rapidly growing column of air upwards under it. From this easily comprehensible example, you can now also quite easily see how the daily rotation of the earth is brought about by its own quite natural mechanism, and is continuously uniformly supported. And so, we have looked at one of the most important places of the earth's interior, and that as briefly and correctly and thoroughly as possible. In the same way, we will choose another not less important place next time, and remain there for a short while.